This week on Straight Talk, while Oregon's Democratic lawmakers have spoken out against Trump's agenda on Capitol Hill,
we could be in a constitutional crisis.
Our State of the Union is threatened and unstable.
They're trying to overload us with chaos so we don't pay attention.
We're now sitting down with Oregon's only Republican representative, Cliff Bence, the voice of the people for Oregon's largest district, spanning much of the state's rural east side.
Those of us that live there are extremely concerned about the condition and protection of the land.
We'll ask him about working with the Trump administration.
If we're going to have them here legally, it's got to be done in a way that acknowledges that they're immigrants.
Addressing the needs of his constituents in areas like energy and education.
It's really hard to go backwards when your budget's so lean as it is.
And tackling his own legislative priorities.
We're not going to show up there in Portland and tell people how to do their business.
All that and more right now on Straight Talk. Hello, and thanks for joining us here on Straight Talk. I'm Stephanie Domerat. In this week's episode, we sit down with Oregon's sole Republican congressional representative, Cliff Bence. Congressman Bence was elected to serve in the House of Representatives for Oregon's 2nd District back in 2020. Before that, he spent 2 years serving as an Oregon state senator from 2018 to 2020 and 10 years as a state representative from 2008 to 2018. Currently, he serves on 2 House committees, the Natural Resources Committee and the Energy and Commerce Committee. Congressman Bence, thanks so much for being with us today, all the way from D.C.
All the way from D.C., Stephanie. Great to be with you.
It is such a great, we're so happy to have you here to be, of course, the voice on the show as Oregon's sole Republican member of Congress in D.C. So I know there's a lot to get to, so we will dive right in. First, though, we're now 3 months into President Trump's 2nd term leading the country. He's made a lot of changes in a short amount of time. I want to ask you, what grade would you give him so far?
I'll give him an A, and I'll give him an A because I think he's doing exactly what he said he would do when he ran for the job. And I'm thinking most people are very impatient. I think that's kind of how Americans are. They want instant gratification, and there's a lot of things that take more than just 3 months to accomplish. But he's doing what he said he would do, and I'm happy for that.
What are you hearing from constituents about his work so far?
Well, it kind of depends on who you talk to. If you talk to Republicans, they'll tell you that he's doing good things on the border. The border is no longer an issue. I think most people would acknowledge that. And I think one of the major things that got him elected is that he would stop the 200,000 people a month coming across, and he's done that. I think they're very happy for the lower energy prices they're paying. I think they're very happy for the efforts he's making when it comes to crime and all the stuff you generally don't hear about. So yeah, I believe he's doing what he said he would do, and the Republicans are happy for that. On the Democrat side, I think Democrats are doing what you do when you're in a minority. I should know. I've spent 12 years in the Oregon legislature, not one day in the majority. And when you're in the minority, you spend a lot of time yelling and complaining and calling out everything you possibly can call out that's, in your opinion, bad about the majority. And that's what Democrats are doing. And they're certainly doing it in my district, just like you see on national news.
Now, the overhaul of federal spending from the Department of Government Efficiency has been one of the more controversial things that we've seen from the administration. How do you feel about these cuts from DOGE and also about Elon Musk's power in the federal government?
So there is no doubt that our government in some fashion needs to shrink. And I say that because we've been spending about $2 trillion a year more than we have coming in. So we spend about $6.5 trillion a year in total in our budget. We have about $5 trillion coming in. So we are overspending. So somehow we have to reduce that spending. My Democrat friends have said, well, that's no problem, just tax the wealthy. And I would point out, if you look at what the Treasury Department recently said, actually back in November, December, the wealthy are paying about 60% in tax once you factor in what they're paying in foreign countries where they earn some of their money. And so this concept that somehow we can just, when we spend $2 trillion more, go find it in the pockets of the wealthy is simply incorrect. I'd like to point out that if we took all the money of people who have $1 billion or more, just took it all away from them, it would raise about $6 trillion. That would pay for our budget for 1 year. And so the solution is not to be found in higher taxes, as much as it would and makes people upset, much as it's super difficult to have a smaller government. We're going to have a smaller government. And people don't want to hear that, but it is the truth. Here's why. We've already spent 36 trillion we don't have. 36 trillion is now being borrowed, and we're paying about $1 trillion in interest on it every year. And so this year we'll add about 2 more trillion to that, to 38 trillion. And next year another 2 trillion. Somehow we have to slow this down. And the simple Democrat solution is, just raise taxes. That will not work. If you raise taxes as high as they are suggesting, many of them, then you'll see people with money leave, and then you won't just leave the increase. You won't just lose the increase. You'll lose all of the tax that they are currently paying. So you have to say to yourself, we're going to have to shrink government. And I think that the Republicans have understood this for a long time. Doing it is really hard.
So you're happy with what we've seen come from DOJ?
Oh, happy is a word that I think a better word would be someone had to start, and that's what DOJ has done. They can do it more precisely. We can do it better. We will do it better as we get more accustomed to trying to reduce the size of government. And when they do make mistakes, and DOJ has made mistakes, then they need, as I've told my constituents, let me know, and then we will reach out to the White House and to the office of DOJ and say, hey, this was a mistake, fix it. And indeed, that's what they do. That's what they did with Bonneville Power when they inappropriately cut some of the more important folks at Bonneville. And those people have been, to a certain extent, rehired. And so when mistakes are made, we go fix them. But like I said, cutting spending is hard, complicated, but you got to get started somehow.
There's a sense from some people that the Trump administration is not following the balance of power that is part of our democracy through the 3 branches of government, including legislative, executive, judicial. Some argue that recent moves by the White House, like federal program cuts and new tariffs, don't fall under the executive branch. Instead, they should fall upon Congress, your branch. What do you think about that? So
the government has faced this situation before, or we in government have faced it before. When Nixon was president, there was a attempt on his part to impound funds and not spend money that Congress had said he had to spend. So a law was passed, a federal law was passed, saying that if the president wants to curtail or impound money, he can do so for a short period of time, but then he has to ask for rescission of that spending. And that's what I understand is now happening. So there's no constitutional crisis, as my fellow Congress women and I didn't see any of the senators in your opening clip, but they're all saying the same thing about a crisis. There's no crisis. The system is working. And I don't know if it wasn't, why is the president to the White House reaching out to me, a congressman? And they are. And it does reach out and ask for insight, if you will, into what they're doing. Now, they certainly don't necessarily listen to all my advice, and I haven't really given that much, but our system's working.
I ask, what is he asking specifically, or what is the federal government asking for your advice on?
Well, they want to know what I want to get done. They want to know what kind of bills I think are important. They want to know what's important for Oregon. They're going to ask me because I'm the sole Republican in the federal delegation. And I'm very happy for their inquiries. I shared with them that I thought one of the more important projects that currently is on the table is we used to be referred to as the Columbia River crossing, as the bridge across the Columbia, and now it's referred to as the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project or something like that. It's the bridge, and I explained to the administration that I thought that was one of the most important things that could happen, because that bridge is super important to our port. And that port is super important to the farmers and ranchers and other folks up and down the Columbia River throughout the entire Northwest. And so that's one thing they asked me about. They've asked me what I think about issues having to do with the interstate freeway system, and I've suggested that in Medford there's a need for a interchange at the south end of that town. Of course, Medford happens to be in my district, so it's my job to look out for that area. And I've suggested that that's something that they need to take into account. I've also, of course, raised in the past the need to make sure Kingsley Field in Klamath Falls ends up with 22 F-35s, because that's a huge, huge, huge important thing, not only for national defense, but for the community of Klamath Falls. So these are the kind of things they're asking me about, and I'm happy to share with them what needs to be done. I've also shared with them one of the bills I've been working on with Senator Wyden for many years, and that's the bill to protect the millions of acres in Malheur County, sometimes referred to as the Owyhee Canyon lands. And I'm happy to say that the senator, thanks to his hard work, stopped President Biden from making it into a monument. And instead, we have an excellent piece of legislation that we've worked together on and have agreed upon that we'll be introducing here in the next week or so. So those are the kind of things I share with the White House and say, hey, we're going to need your support on this kind of legislation to protect our sagebrush steppe lands. And of course, I've talked to them about the Fix Our Forest Act, so we can get back into the woods and start reducing fire danger that fills our cities, including Portland, with smoke in the summer. And the White House is obviously very, very supportive of the Fix Our Forest Act. So these are the kind of things I've been working on, and that's what the White House was asking me about.
Just for the interest of time, real quickly, so did you get certainty that there would be federal funding as planned for the Interstate Bridge project?
I don't know if I got certainty. What I got was the indication that there was support at the highest levels for the project. They have not yet, as I understand it, decided what exactly is going to happen, but I did not hear anything negative whatsoever in my conversation. But I'm not in the executive branch, so
okay.
I can only repeat what we discussed.
Okay, thank you. Well, back to President Trump and his power. I want to ask you another question about that. In his first 100 days, he's signed 140 executive orders. For context, he signed about 30 orders in his first term. Biden signed 42 executive orders into law in his first 100 days. Conversely, the president has signed only 5 bills into law since stepping into the Oval Office. That is the lowest of any president since the 1950s. As a member of the legislative branch, does this suggest to you that the president is trying to expand presidential power too far? Does this make you uncomfortable, or are you okay with that?
Well, don't confuse an executive order with a law. It's not. It's an order that the executive branch and the leader of it has the power to sign, but it doesn't mean that what's in the order is going to automatically happen. I view an executive order, for the most part, there are different types of orders. But many of his orders are signed to show that he would support legislation if we in Congress choose to bring it. And as far as the number of bills, I would simply say to most people in my district, they don't want more laws. They really don't. They don't think that everything can be fixed by a law, or for that matter, they don't think that everything can be fixed by money, as my Democrat colleagues seem to think. What I would say is that he's asking Congress to use his executive orders as a guide to what does need to happen, and we're working, in fact, on passing or actually putting legislation together we can get passed. As you know, we control the House by the slimmest of margins for 4 votes. On some days fewer than that, depending upon who's sick, who's not here, and that we also have to remember that the Senate has just 53 Republicans, and it takes 60 to get anything done if you're going to avoid delays occasioned by very, very long speeches. So the point here is we are moving toward a reconciliation package that will include substantial portions of some of the president's executive orders, and we're bringing other legislation that will back up other of his orders.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about tariffs now. That's a big conversation right now, nationally, locally. I want to mention for our viewers, this taping is happening Wednesday morning, so things could change in this conversation. But right now, a bipartisan group of senators is pushing a bill introduced by Oregon Senator Ron Wyden that would end the national emergency President Trump declared and give the power back to Congress to control tariffs. Congressman, is this something you support?
No. And the reason I do not is because years ago, the Congress recognized that tariffs were something that would be extraordinarily difficult for Congress to agree upon. And so they delegated that power, or we delegated that power, to the executive branch. It doesn't mean that we can't modify that delegation, doesn't mean we can't ultimately take it back. But I'll tell you the type of changes that the president has been making in his initial tariff proposals reflects the need for, I'll say alacrity, but it's speed in responding to what other countries do. Tariffs are complex, dangerous devices, as everybody knows this. But if we're going to get some of the jobs back that we lost over the past 30 years in our manufacturing sector, if we're going to protect our supply chains, and a great example would be uranium and other rare earth minerals, if we're going to get our ability back to actually produce those here and process them, we're going to have to protect those industries. And that's what these tariffs are designed to do. And there's any number of other reasons that tariffs are a thing that need attention. And I think the president's been brave enough to step up and try to address those issues using that device.
I want to ask something that is impacting Oregonians. During Trump's first term, agricultural farms were hit hard by tariffs. The government stepped in with subsidies. What are you hearing from farmers now regarding tariffs that we're seeing? Are they concerned?
Well, of course they're concerned. I would say that they all know that because of the way our Senate is set up, that other countries are going to retaliate against farm states, because each farm state has, well, 2 senators, no matter how few people that state might have. So, of course, they're going to immediately cut off the farmers' exports. That's predictable. And President Trump recognized that 4.5 years ago or so, and that's why there was money paid out to farmers for the damage that they had to take on the chin because of that type of response from foreign countries. So I anticipate that in fact, I don't anticipate, there's already discussions going on with G.T. Thompson, the chair of the Ag Committee, in regard to how to make sure farmers understand that they're not being abandoned, and that we're trying to figure out some way of making sure they don't bear the brunt of the retaliatory response by some of these other countries.
Okay, so it's being looked at that they will have a similar subsidy as they had in the first term.
It's been discussed. I'm not in any position to guarantee anything, but I know it's being discussed.
Okay, well, we are going to take a quick break and return with more from Congressman Bentz right after this. Stay with us. And welcome back to Straight Talk. This week, we are talking to Oregon's only Republican U.S. Representative, Cliff Bence. Congressman, thank you again for being with us all the way from D.C. today.
It's great to be with you, Stephanie.
Yes,
thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much. We don't get to speak with you enough, so I appreciate your time today. Now, we know the Trump administration is working hard to enforce immigration policies and cracking down on people who are living in the U.S. without legal status. Republicans are also working to allocate billions more in the budget for mass deportations and border security. Do you feel like those efforts are moving in the right direction?
Now, they are moving in the right direction. Again, this is something that the president promised he would do if elected, and he's doing it. The fact that he secured the border, though, is something that's worthy of reflection for just a moment, because if you're interested in incremental immigration reform, a first step had to be a secure border, because you could not possibly talk about immigration with a straight face if you had 200,000 people a month pouring in, as we did for much of the Biden administration's 4 years. And you just couldn't talk about it. And nobody wanted to talk about it because the border was not secure. The border is now secure, and in the reconciliation package we've been discussing, there's opportunity for more funds to be sent to the border to make sure that it remains secure. And this will then allow us to have meaningful conversations about visa programs and other legal arrangements to bring people into this country. And I should point out that legal immigration has continued while this other effort to secure the border and deport those criminals and others that we don't want here continues.
So this week, a group of churches in Oregon filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, arguing that places of worship, medical clinics, schools should be protected from immigration enforcement and raids. The lawsuit says giving ICE access to these places is inciting anxiety. Take a listen to this.
For them, it could mean their families getting torn apart. None of us should be able to choose between whether we can get our medical care, send our kids to school, go to church and practice our religion, or just request social assistance, or even the right to be able to assemble and the risk of being detained on that.
Do you think people should be able to access these places without worry of having their citizenship status questioned?
If you're here illegally, then you've kind of given up the right to not be concerned about being deported. That's you simply, if you don't have the right to be here, then you're going to be at risk to be removed. What I would point out to people is that if you came here without those protections, then why would you assume they're here once you got here? Now, everybody's entitled to some degree of due process. It changes depending upon who you are, where you are, and under what arrangements you came into the country. So I don't dispute the need for due process. I'm a lawyer. I understand that that's required. But I will say that the degree of due process for someone who is here illegally is slightly different than that which you would, quote, normally see, end quote. And I don't particularly want to go into too much detail on this because as a lawyer, you always worry about getting it exactly right. I'll just say it's slightly different.
What is slightly different? You mean the rights of people who don't have legal status?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
What was different exactly when you mean when you don't have the rights? The rights are different?
Right, so yeah, right. If you are here illegally, then the type of due process that you are entitled to is slightly different. And so you'd have to look into that and get an immigration lawyer to spell it out more clearly, but that's my understanding.
Have you been happy with what you've been seeing on the national stage as far as how deportations are going?
So what I would say about it, there's much discussion about how people are being deported. I would just say that that I'm more than willing to listen to people that share with me deportations that are not consistent with the law. Then somebody should reach out and say so. I would point out that there's been suggestions that young kids have been removed from the United States. And that in fact is true, but that generally, and to the situations I'm aware of, is because their parents wanted to take them with them when the parents were deported. They didn't want to leave their children here. And so that's how I think that is being managed. That's the information that I have available.
So you're part of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and your committee has been tasked with reducing $880 billion in spending cuts over the next 10 years. We only have a few minutes here, but I think this is important, so I want to get to it. A large portion of the budget funds Medicaid, leaving many worried that there will be significant cuts to Medicaid. A third of Oregonians rely on Medicaid. About half of the state's children do. Can you tell us where things stand on this right now in your committee?
Well, I can certainly tell you that the annual budget for Medicaid that the federal government pays is close to $600 billion. The amount that the Energy and Commerce Committee has been charged with finding over the next 10 years is $880 billion. If you divide that by 10, that's $88 billion a year. Now, that is not all going to come out of Medicaid. It absolutely is not. But if it did, and I'm not saying that it would, then remember you start with $600 billion. And if you took away 80, that would leave you $520 billion. So to say that it's going to be no longer a program would be simply incorrect. Also, my hypothetical is incorrect in the sense that my understanding is from my committee that there will not be any amount less than that which we are spending this year spent in future years on Medicaid. And so people that are running around with their hair on fire, scaring people, and that's many of my co-Democrats in my federal delegation need to stop. The point here is that we haven't decided yet what we're going to do, but it's not going to be the destruction of the program. The Medicaid is a good program. It needs to be protected. But most people who have studied it, including many doctors, recognize that if we're going to sustain that program, we need to make sure it's working more efficiently and effectively in delivering benefits to those who absolutely need them.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for your time today, Congressman.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great having you on the show. And thank you so much for watching today. We will see you back here next week for another episode of Straight Talk. A reminder that you can stream the show on your own schedule anytime. You can download the free TV app, KGW Plus, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. We'll see you next time on Straight Talk. Until then, be well.